This episode of the ABIC podcast is brought to you by the CPD Institute of Australia. Hello and welcome to the ABIC podcast, your online support community for the aesthetic and beauty industry. Here, we're strengthening and unifying the industry through representation, innovation, and education. This is a platform created and dedicated to the aesthetic and beauty industry, valuing unity and advancement. We serve to represent, support, and inspire you by connecting you with industry experts, expanding your knowledge through educational pieces, and bringing you the latest industry news. This is the ABIC podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Miller, and today's guest is Nicky from the CPD Institute of Australia. A leader in this growing field, Nicky brings cross-industry expertise and a global perspective to the artistry and safety of facial aesthetics, where she has been instrumental in shaping the careers of more than 3,000 healthcare practitioners and therapists in Australia. A registered nurse with a background in mental health nursing underpins and drives her values in ensuring best practice and evidence-based treatments. Patient advocacy, service delivery, and outcomes are her priorities. Nicky also serves as an ABIC Councillor, further contributing to the advancement of the industry. Here to discuss navigating authentic and ethical consultations in aesthetics from the CPD Institute of Australia. Today we welcome Nicky Zemus. Welcome to the podcast, Nicky. How are you today?
Hello, Steph. Thank you for having me.
I always get excited having chats with you, Nicky.
Likewise, it's always fun.
It is, isn't it? And we're always nice and cheeky, so look out, everyone. There's some incredibly, I wouldn't say controversial, but game-changing innovative ideas today. We're actually talking about authentic consultations and consultations in general today in our podcast. But before we start, I would love for you to tell all of our listeners about your history and how you came into the beauty and aesthetic industry. It is a very fabulous story.
Oh, wow. Gee, that's going to take me back, Steph. So yeah, and I can't believe it. Like the journey started 16 years ago and it always feels like yesterday, literally. And I think most people will feel that way when they are in business where, you know, every day feels like it's their first day, which is, it's exciting. It's exciting. But for me, the journey started 16 years ago. Registered nurse, always quite passionate about working in behavioural sciences, working in mental health space, working in lots of different areas of nursing. So I had an opportunity to work in the industry. And to be honest, as soon as I sort of got into the industry, I thought, I'm not sure this is for me. There were some things that stood out to me that didn't quite align with my value system. But I love the actual practical part of it. I love the injecting and I love those transformations and making a difference. It's all about, you know, making that difference. And I thought, this possibly isn't for me. I'm going to go back to my normal nursing. However, I had an incredible person hold my hand and say, look, you know, let's give it another go. We'll align you with a doctor that's quite ethical and see how you go. So back then I thought, well, I'll just do some moonlighting. I'll inject. I'll work in the cosmetic space only a few days a week. And I will go to the job that I had prior, which was training and education. I always have been in, you know, training, but also working in the acute sector of nursing. And what was really striking whilst I was actually injecting was patients and their responses. So there was a common theme that I picked up on, and that was patients saying things like, wow, I've been having this treatment for such a long time and I didn't know it was a risk. Nobody told me this. I didn't know this. And I'm thinking, what's going on? Why don't they know? What am I doing different to others? Or what are the missing links? Are we all doing the same thing and our patients aren't processing this information? What is our language looking like? Why is there such a gap or a disconnect? So I couldn't quite put puzzle together. There was, are we doing a good job? Aren't we doing a good job? Are they listening? Are they not listening? What is it? So that's when I sort of set out, and having my mental health cap on, I said, you know what, I wouldn't mind writing a training program and capturing all of these observations that I've made, looking at what informed consent looks like in the aesthetic practice, because that's another thing that I picked up pretty quickly. Informed consent, I think, was misinterpreted as how much money does a person have and how much are they willing to spend.
Right.
So it's not uncommon, if you've got somebody that's happy to spend $3,000 or $4,000, you assume that they're of the right mind and stable enough to want to part with that amount of money. And it's a misinterpretation of informed consent. So all of these things, I thought, well, let me just put it all together, combined with all of the challenges that I had when I came into the industry. And there were many. There was a lot of information that I didn't know. It wasn't until 12 months into injecting, I realized that complications happen and high lace exists. I didn't know what it was. It took me months to get a high lace. It took me months to get a high lace protocol off somebody. No one wanted to share that information. So all these alarm bells went off for me, and I thought, we're not so safe. Yeah, so I basically collated all of the information that I lacked and wanted to know and developed a training package. So I went through a little bit of a life change back then, and I was a single mum and money was an issue. So the only and best place that I can advertise on was Gumtree. So our first course was actually advertised on Gumtree. And I'm really, really I can't tell you how my mouth hurts from smiling, how happy and blessed and humbled I am to feel that we've still got nurses that are part of CPD that were part of the first group of training.
The Gumtree nurses.
The Gumtree nurses. It's really lovely. It's really lovely. And the invested interest, and they've been the most incredible, people that we've worked with that have actually supported us evolve and improve what we're doing and how we're doing it, and to get us to where we are today. And we're constantly evolving and improving. So the passion that's come along our way has been incredible. We've been quite blessed. So that's, in a nutshell, kind of how CPD started. Yeah.
Wow. I always love hearing your story because, and I know some people don't like to be known this way, but you're a disruptor, but in the best sense of the word. And you are not just a forward thinker, but you are not scared of telling it how it is and giving your opinion. A lot of us in this industry want to be strong that way, and we want to be forward, in being able to come up with our own opinions and call something when we say, we don't think this is right, we don't think this is safe, we don't agree. What internal resources do you have to bring that forward? Because I admire that quality so much in you, and you do it so gracefully. You don't do it forcefully. You just state what you think so assuredly. What's your secret?
I don't know if it's a secret. I just think I love life too much. I need to sleep with ease, and I like to walk without having to look over my shoulder. So it's about being true to yourself and feeling comfortable in your shoes. And that's what it is. And I know sometimes, you do say things and you think, gosh, how's that been interpreted? And I didn't mean it, because misinterpretation is part of the risk with sharing your thoughts and opinion. It's the intention is never to offend. It's just to express what I believe is ethical.
And it never comes across that way. I feel that it's just a courageous voice that you have, and I feel that giving that to our industry, it's okay to say, look, we don't 100% agree with that. We can do this better. And then having that, drive to then go, you know what, I'm new to this industry, but I think we could do it better. And then I'm going to create a training institute. It's pretty phenomenal stuff. And you always call out things that you see that can be done better, and that could be considered disruptive, but it's also considered innovative, and that's how our industry gets better. And this is one of the areas that you do it so well in, is the consultation space, the mental health space, and all of the the things when it comes to patient care. You're such an advocate for patients, and this is what we're talking about today. We're talking about authentic consultation. What is an authentic consultation in the aesthetic industry anyway? And
Mm.
why do you think it's so important for our practitioners, but also for the client?
Yeah, an authentic consultation, in my opinion, is to be able to part with information, educate, share, have a transaction of communication, where the intent of the practitioner is pure, it's not egotistical, it's for the greater good for the end user. And it's about ensuring, I mean, that you've got a collaboration, but the authenticity is about definitely dropping the ego and making sure that it's for the greater good of the patient. I think at the end of the day, we're here to actually empower our end users, our patients, our clients, lots of different terms out there. We're not here to disempower, make them dependent, or make them a copic. And I think for me, that's one of the big red flags and risks that I identified early in the piece, because I believe that there is addiction in what we're doing. I've always felt there was addiction. I always use the analogy of, like, if somebody, I suppose, has an issue with alcohol, there are opportunities and support out there for that person, or the likes of drugs. There's support for somebody out there. But what are we doing for individuals who have been coerced or haven't been well educated, or are using aesthetic treatments to manage or to deal with an internal missing link for them?
You're talking about delving deep. We see our industry sometimes as a bit more superficial than that, don't we? A client comes in, we do a consultation. I'm speaking in general terms here, not about any particular, but we see, okay, what's the sales for the day? What can I make out of this patient? Is that what you're referring to as well? Is it as a motivation possibly
Absolutely. And I
driving
think,
us?
yeah, and I think this industry, it's evolved very quickly and fast. And if we go back 20 years ago, when these treatments were no longer a Medicare item number, and a Schedule 4 medication that nurses can just have a phone order for to proceed with treatments, that the industry grew very, very fast and very quickly. There's nothing wrong with that, but its money was fast coming, and unfortunately, greed can set in, and that could be at the cost of the end user, being the patient or the client. And I'm not saying that is happening for all, but it has happened, and it is happening for some.
I think where we went wrong was the way that we were using our marketing and advertising in our
Absolutely.
industry was going into a direction where that was feeding the purpose and aim of our industry, where it shouldn't have been, a kind of a feeder for us. And it became competitive, and that's when it
Absolutely.
goes wrong, right? When you increase competition in our industry. That's not to say that in the world competition isn't a great thing. It drives innovation and progress, but in the way of always underlining that we are doing something that is
Hmm.
inherently medical, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you don't see this attitude with endocrinologists. No, I'm going to go to that endocrinologist because he's got a special on, or because he's actually selling his insulin for a lot less and the hormone replacements a lot less again. So let's go to these endocrinologists over the other. It's unethical, from that perspective. So that's, I think, been an improvement. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when we're sitting down with our patients, always having that at the front of mind to say, how can we serve and help and care for this patient more holistically? But that starts with the interview process and the communication process with our patients, and how, as a practitioner, can we ensure that we're actually asking the right questions, leading the patient in the right direction to uncover, I suppose, the true intentions and expectations of your patients.
Yeah, and I think, to keep it simple, you don't know what you don't know. And we don't know what our patients do and don't know. So one of our biggest risks is that we're never going to be privy to a person's internal dialogue. So when they walk through the door and they sit on that, the bed, we assume they're here because of what we know we do and what we know we can offer, but they don't necessarily understand the intricacies of what we're here, what we can offer, the treatments, the risks, and so forth. So I think it does come down to education and communication. But rather than positioning yourself to share all the information about the treatment offerings, getting some intel and insight from the patients about what their understanding of the treatments are. So don't give it all away. It's like, hey, you're here today. Why are you here today? What are you hoping to achieve? What are your end goals? Tell me a little bit about the medication you've had in the past or the medication you are seeking to have today. And then going in to fill in the gaps. So I like to fill in the gaps because I need to know, I need to have some assurity of what knowledge my patient or my client has about what they're seeking to have.
Are you finding that our patients are coming in with more knowledge, or are you finding they're coming in with perceived to be more knowledge, but it's incorrect information?
Some are coming in with a lot of knowledge, most are, but there's still that perceived piece. There's still people coming into our clinic confused about the difference between neuromodulators and dermal fillers.
Right.
They're coming into clinic because they're observing an image that they've seen on social media or the outcome of a friend's aesthetic, outcomes of their face. So they're looking at the end result and they're coming in asking for that end result. But the bits in between of how we attain that end result is where the missing links are and where we need to support them with further education.
We're finding in clinic that because of the new TGA and APA requirements, there's a lot of American content being shared, a lot of overseas content being shared, and we're finding clients and patients coming in with overseas information, saying, oh, this such and such doctor does this, or such and such nurse does this. Are you finding that that's a little bit of an obstacle to the way that we do things here in Australia and our ethical standards, where clients will come in and want these unrealistic or extreme type procedures because they're seeing them overseas and expecting that that's what we do in our country as well?
Definitely. I think that was on the rise before all of these TGA and APRA changes, but I think it's a lot more now. Absolutely. And it seems to be a more viable option for patients to actually go overseas. I have 3 patients now that are actually going to countries to have treatments, both non-invasive and invasive. From the financial perspective, it's financially more viable and just a lot easier, less loopholes for them.
I'm hearing some patients, well, we will just hop over for a trip to Bali because
Absolutely.
we get a holiday for the same price. We can get a holiday and our fillers, all of our tox for the same price as coming into a clinic. So we just do that every 3 months. Every 3 months we hop over for a weekend, 3-4 days, and have all of our fillers, and then off we go. Unrealistic expectations is a real thing. What are some other common sort of challenges that practitioners can encounter when trying to our best deliver an ethical assessment and consultation?
I think patient disclosure is always our biggest risk. And by that, I mean, we're not extracting or receiving all the relevant information that we need before we proceed with treatment or provide treatment options to our patients. So we still have, due to, years and years of marketing and advertising and sexualizing and, I suppose pornifying these treatments, which has been done very well in the past, of patients perhaps thinking these treatments are an extension of beauty and not really understanding the medical implications and risks associated. So that's still there. Even though APRA and TGA have made some changes, there's been a shift, but we've got a little while to go, I think, in raising the bar and raising awareness about the risks associated with some of these treatments. Absolutely.
I never hear anybody putting it the way that you do. You bluntly say sexualizing the treatments. And I love that you're putting that forward because that is absolutely true. I think everybody knows that inherently. Everybody doesn't really say it in that way. What do you think are the implications of that particular part of our marketing the way it used to be, or even just the perceived, I suppose what we do is enhance our beauty so that we can become more attractive and sexualized?
Okay, so it's so deep, and how deep do we want to go to, Steph? Because I'd love to invite the social worker and the psychologist that we work with, because we're very collaborated with Swinburne University, and we're continuing to do studies on this as we speak. We've got research happening.
Well,
So
tell us a bit. Go on.
I'll tell you, but like with regards to the impact that these treatments have on a psychological, psychosocial perspective, they're going to vary from individual to individual, depending on a person's history, interpretation of life situations, crisis. There's so many implications to how it's going to be perceived and interpreted. For some people will have the treatment and it's fun, they understand the risks, and off they go. For others, the impact of having a treatment and the changes that it makes for them, both positive and perhaps negative, are going to be different. And what do I mean by that? You can have individuals that have the treatment and all of a sudden they've rebirthed. It's like they've reclaimed themselves. These changes have actually empowered them to be a better version of themselves. And that's so exciting and happy when that happens. However, when you have somebody where there is incongruency with when, at the time they're seeking the treatment, and by that I mean, they're not feeling great, they're feeling a bit flat, they're wanting to have aesthetic treatment so that they can feel better.
Right.
And the intention for their why can potentially be a risk. Multiple reasons why. They may not be in a happy frame of mind to be happy with the results of the treatment. So expectations can be a little bit off for them, opposed to if they were wanting to receive treatment when they were happy. But also the association of, I don't feel good, I want to have some Botox. And whenever they don't feel good, reaching out for some Botox, which we have had patients like that in the past, is a consideration if we're going to be talking about risk of addiction.
Are you a clinical professional looking to advance in cosmetic aesthetics? The CPD Institute of Australia, a registered training organisation, offers hands-on training in cosmetic aesthetic injectables. With small class sizes led by the industry's most highly regarded instructors, CPD Institute of Australia offers a range of courses, including platelet-rich plasma, PRP, mesotherapy, first aid, and skin science. Enhance your skills with ongoing support and training today and elevate your practice. Visit www.cpdinstitute.com.au. It is, you said, like, how deep do you want to go? It is quite a deep topic, isn't it? Because we're talking, really, what we're talking about is mental health considerations.
Yeah, and I think for me, what I want to touch on too on that point, just to elaborate further, is when I've had mothers bring their underage daughters in for treatment because they want to feel better and look better. And for me, that they're alarm bells. I actually have to pull them on the side and say, which part of your 16 and 17-year-olds daughters' face and aesthetic, outcomes do you think are imperfect or not okay? Because, these treatments are not cheap. We're looking at anywhere between $300 and $900 per treatment. You're positioning your daughter to need to pay for these, or are you going to pay for them? Like all of these other intricacies and details are what can lead to other bigger problems as well, which are dismissed. People are still focusing on the end outcome, and that is the aesthetic outcome of like, I've got lips, I've got cheeks, I feel great. But all the in-between bits is where things can go wrong if they're not considered.
And if we, we're being honest and we're practitioners or we have clinics and salons, we have seen that happen where, the parents will bring their children in and actually sit down in front of you and the child and say, oh, my daughter or my son has a problem with this. They've got whatever it may be, from excess hair to, hey, can you help them with their nose? It's like, well, I love the way you put it. What is it that you don't think is pleasing about their features? That can have deep implications on that child growing up and their perception of themselves as well. We really need to be careful about that. And that's why, I think that there's no specific laws saying you can't treat underage, but there definitely are very big considerations and safeguards in that area.
There are ethical considerations, and thinking about what door are you opening, and what path are you supporting this person to be on? Can you support them if things go wrong, or do you need to refer? And that's another area that we need to consider in the aesthetic space, because our opportunity and our ability to refer as nurses is compromised. So in a situation like that, maybe it would be better that you refer them to a plastic or to a GP who can better refer and support that person or that young child.
I love that you brought up referrals, because that's something that I feel that we're working towards improving in our industry. We had an ABIC conference where we invited, and we always do, every sector of our industry, but in particular panels with diverse expertise on them and diverse qualifications. And we talked about the importance of referring and building your network within various different professionals and specialists within the field. We don't do that enough. And I feel like, where is that coming from? Where do you think that culture started, where we want to keep our patients? We're scared of handing them over, where in the medical space, that's not the case, right?
Money. Simply put, it's money. The fear of referring a patient and the patient not coming back, and a missed opportunity for money that they would normally spend with us. And that's kind of the sad bit, because if you are referring because you are wanting a better outcome for that patient, or you are unable to meet the needs of your patient. So you're referring to an expert or somebody who knows something that you don't know. That's the name of the game. And I think that, well, if they don't come back, they don't come back. You've provided great service. You've acted in the best interest for the patient. And maybe I've got a little bit of a different, mindset and attitude. It's like, let things go. Other great things are coming. If it's not meant to be, let it go. You've provided a good service, and the universe will provide you another one or two clients to look after. Agreed, I think.
I love that mindset of, let it go and things will come to you. And that's just the way you've got very successful business. And that's the way that you run your businesses. Every time I speak to an extremely successful person, they have this unique mindset of, it's okay, there's plenty more, and I'd rather be known to be ethical. That patient will remember me because I gave extremely good customer care or patient care to them. They will refer other people to me, and they will always keep coming back to me because I've done the best for that patient. And patients, they're not silly. They know this, right?
Absolutely.
Abundance is a mind frame and a state of mind. And I feel like you do that so well and in spades.
Oh, thank you, Steph. Thank you for that. But I think also too, if you know that you need to refer a patient and you're refraining from doing that because of the risk of the patient not coming back and you not having a regular income from them, is that not a form of manipulation and coercion?
I love these types of conversations because they really help us to expand and grow and think deeper about what we do and become better, more ethical humans. Like, there's this big highlight, I suppose, and discussion around another controversial topic, which is body dysmorphic disorder. And whenever I talk to you, Steve, every time I have these conversations, you highlight different parts of this particular disorder, but you also balance it out saying that's not the only disorder we need to be looking out for. And it's become a strong focus in one direction. Can you tell us what is body dysmorphic disorder? Because people are mislabeling that.
How do we identify that first?
Well, it's only a small fragment of it's of mental health concerns or problems, but it's one that's been very highlighted by APRA for the aesthetic industry.
Right.
So when we're thinking and talking about dysmorphia, there's a lot of other mental health concerns and problems associated with a person who may have dysmorphia, some of which can include anxiety, depression, personality disorders. And what we need to dig deeper in is what are the characteristics and what are some of the behavioural attributes with anxiety, depression, and body and other behavioural concerns there. But body dysmorphia refers to an over concern about one or three areas of a person's face or body, to the point where this over concern can cause a dysfunction in their ability to work or go to school. It actually can affect relationships, long-term relationships, and the over concern can lead them to lots of other behaviors to try and manage what they don't like, from bunny hopping from doctor to doctor, from seeking treatments from various other practitioners, which comes with a lot of risks as well. Just infection control alone, and the variance in infection control practices raises a lot of risks. And it can lead to surgery, and perhaps surgery that's inexpensive and not as professional, and therefore the outcomes can be detrimental, can lead to suicide. So it's quite a significant mental health concern when talking about the aesthetic industry. However, there are many other mental health concerns that we're not giving enough acknowledgement and education to, for the aesthetic space. Anxiety alone, and I was astounded when I looked at the the Bureau of Statistics and the rise of anxiety concerns and disorders that we've had. Okay, admittedly due to lockdown and COVID, but anxiety disorders don't go away in a hurry. Yeah, we need
No.
therapy for that. That we need to understand how we got there, to try and actually understand how we can manage ourselves if we are to get to that stage again. So we've got anxiety, we've got depression, and we've spoken about this before. We have also lots of healthcare changes that happen with individuals. And if we look at women alone and look at perimenopausal and menopausal symptoms, then we need to start looking at behavior, mood, feelings, anxiety, and depression on a spectrum, on a line of, we're here today, but we could be up here and elevated tomorrow, but we could come back to our normal baseline, 48 hours later, or we could be hitting rock bottom, a little bit later on. And that is not too far from the truth for some women who may be perimenopausal or menopausal. And so how that impacts us as clinicians when we're doing a consultation and assessment is that we're going to have a variance in mood, variance in expectation, variance in the feelings. Patients are going to come in with different feelings. So they might be feeling happy today and happy with the outcome and the treatment. But if they're coming in because it's their routine 3-monthly neuromodulator treatment date, they might not be feeling so happy today. So, there will be a difference in the outcome, absolutely, for sure. And there'll be a difference in the communication, in their behavior, and in the transaction between patient and consultant. And, there are many stories out there, where we've seen it in clinic where, patients have come in and the nurse will say, "My gosh, she's not so happy today. She was really grumpy today." And, we have to say, she's allowed to be. We're not on her ride. She's going through some things. So, it's how are we going to present ourselves and how are we going to deliver our consultation and assessment to get the maximum information out of our clients or patients. But most importantly, key here is how we can empower our patients, because if they're already not feeling great, how are we going to support them for the treatment they are going to or wishing to have today? Are we going to treat them today, or are we going to give them a little other treatment and empower them to have the treatment next week? So it's doing the cha-cha sometimes with our patients. I do believe that it's There's nothing cookie cutter, and it can't be cookie cutter. And I think where the power of a powerful and an empowering consultation is to actually allow the time to listen and to understand the choice of words that patients use. And it's not a tick and flick. And we all know what questions to ask. We all have templates of what questions we need to ask. But it's also thinking about asking that question multiple different ways, because you're going to get different answers. Understanding the psychosocial status of the patient, how are they feeling today, what's been happening in the last month, what's happening next month, just getting as much information. So that rapport building isn't a one-off, it's an ongoing opportunity. And building trust. Building trust, it also leads to an opportunity for excellent authenticity in the transaction of care.
Wow, I love everything you've just said. And it brought me on a journey on really considering pre these types of treatments being available very easily to the public. We, as we grow older, we have an acceptance of, yep, I'm going to have some smile lines. I love my smile lines. I've earned my smile lines. I used to hear all these things from older women when I was younger. I've earned these wrinkles. I've earned these sunspots. This sunspot means I've had fun in the sun. Like, I'm not advocating for having unprotected fun in the sun, but there was this attitude towards aging, which was extremely healthy, right? And then now we've interrupted that aging process, or what it looks, the appearance of the aging process, right? And I know this is happening to me too, but it only lasts so long. And then you then get to the end of the 3 months and you're like, oh, right, I'm not looking as fresh as I was. And then it starts to affect your mental health. And you're like, oh,
Absolutely.
I look terrible. I feel terrible. I'm so old. And you start to go into this spiral. I need to go back into clinic to get that hit of, beauty or yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I need my cheeks to be where they were 6 months ago. And you're constantly fighting against something that's inevitable anyway and going to age. But the mental distress and stress that it causes every few months when you're seeing these changes happen again, rather than going, right, I accept this and it is something that's going to happen to me gradually. What do you think the long-term implications of that are? Because I'm starting to be in that category where I'm seeing the changes, and every few months I'm not a happy camper.
Well, doesn't that come back to managing expectations? So we're doing this for whose expectations are we meeting?
Right.
Are they actually ours, or are they cultural? Because I know when I go to Europe, women don't have dermal fillers and Botox treatments. I can be on the beach with my 90-year-old grandmother who's wearing bikinis and bikinis, stretch skin, stretch marks and cellulite, and she's rocking it. She's got attitude when she's walking in that water. And no one looks twice. It's normal. It's okay, because they love her for who she is as a person, and it really radiates. You really feel that energy there. It's just totally different, a different mindset. So I think it's that cultural expectation, and we're very aligned with America and what they market to and perceive to be beautiful. We're more aligned with America than what we are with Europe. That's absolutely for sure. So I don't know the answer to that, because I'm in the same basket.
It's a hyper focus. Yeah, I feel like you observe aging in one way when you don't have treatments, and then when you do start having treatment, hyper focus. It's periodic. So when the treatment starts to decline, you're like, all right, now I'm noticing absolutely everything, and it affects your confidence levels. And I think that's a deeper conversation we need to have. And you touched on it earlier about addiction. Addiction doesn't come in maybe the traditional form in our industry. Maybe it comes in that hyper focus, that of sort of fixation every few months to fix what is inevitable really in the long run is aging. And it is a beautiful thing. We have earned the privilege of our smile lines, haven't we?
Yeah, we do. And that's really interesting, because, addiction is a word that has a negative connotation, but it can be a positive thing. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being addicted to healthy food, being addicted to looking at your best version of yourself, or, exercising and being healthy in the way you live through life. It's not a bad thing. It's when it becomes dysfunctional, or it's when you can't afford it and it causes you stress or distress that you can't have it. So And again, that's also another look. This whole piece on consultation is massive. It's like a whole 1 day workshop, because what we haven't covered and APRA have is the importance of informed consent for financial, viability as well, and that's a really important one. So it's enough to it's not enough to actually say to your clients, today's treatment's going to be $300. Do you consent? Sign the dotted line. It's more about saying today's treatment's going to be $300, but based on all of what we've discussed and what your commitment and where you want to take your aesthetic outcomes to, over the next 12 months, you're looking at a commitment of $15,000. Do you want to start this journey?
Right.
Because that changes things.
It does, doesn't it? And before APRA did mention it, I must admit, I don't think that it was commonly consulted that way. These are long term. If you start this process every year, this is what you're looking at.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. Look, I love it. I think it's what I love about the changes, and I'm not going to say that they haven't impacted me, because my neuroplasticity and automatic pilot went straight into, I've got a new nurse on, so let me look at discounting neuromodulator treatment so that I can support this nurse and put her on the map. Honestly, hands up, I did it. So now I don't do that. I can't do that. So it's really about, I suppose, we're growing on the merits of who we are, word of mouth, and providing excellent service delivery. So I think that consultation piece is where the power is in empowering our patients and having a successful business.
And empowering our patients is also about, you touched on earlier about listening. And we always say, oh, yes, we listen to our patients, or the importance of listening. And are we listening? Are we hearing? What role? And when we talk about listening, what type of listening are we talking about when we're trying to foster deeper, more ethical consultations? And how do we actually build this? Because I feel like we're too busy talking half the time and explaining to really take a back seat and go, you know what? Let our patient drive for a sec.
Yeah, absolutely. Just listen to them talk, vent, key questions. Quite often I say, ask questions. Tell me, how was your weekend? How was your day? What have you got planned? Oh my gosh, Christmas is around the corner. And they sound like nothing.
Chat. Yeah, they sound like nothing.
They do.
Yes.
But guess what? Out of that, I'm going to get, oh yeah, God, I'm dreading Christmas. Oh, I'm going to have to spend all this money. Red flag.
Right.
How am I going to incorporate that into today? Yeah, it's been really stressful. Red flag. Why has it been stressful? What's gone on for you? So it's stopping and thinking and digging a little bit deeper. And we don't, I think, allow ourselves the time and the permission to dig deeper. And I think we need to reposition ourselves as investigators. We're not just tick and flick. We know the questions to ask. We want to know, do we want to treat this patient or this client? Because we have the right not to if we don't want to. Are they going to be a patient or a client that I can hold their hand and take them on this journey for the next 12 to 24 months and give them the outcome that they're looking for? Or have I just quickly grabbed their hand to give them what they want today, and then the next 3 months, and I know they're going to go? Is that authentic? Is that ethical? What are the other options? And I think that's something I have to talk about. What are all the other options available to that patient? Because it's not just one option.
And today is just the tip of the iceberg. What you do at CPD Institute and what you're dedicating, a big part of your life to is educating the professionals in our industry and patient care, and how can we do it better. And for starters, I want to say thank you so much for being an education member of ABIC, because through your membership you help thousands of practitioners elevate themselves and do better in the industry, and provide this incredible knowledge to people who are thirsty for it. We really are thirsty for it. So for starters, thank you so much for being part of ABIC and giving back in that way.
Thank you for having me.
And then also leading to the piece that this is actually the beginning with you. We're actually going to be having a series of discussions about various sectors of our industry and various considerations. And we're going to be doing this over the course of a year. And obviously we've just had our incredible live that we just did. And so I want everybody who's listening today to stay tuned, because we have access to this incredible educator, renowned in our industry, who goes off all around the world speaking as well. So we have access to you. And we also have, as ABIC members, we have access to your courses at a discounted price as well, to be able to facilitate more knowledge and more learning, and also a lot of free benefits from the CPD Institute. So I want to thank you so much for donating all those wonderful things, and one of them is a CANSAT tool. And that's a screening tool for body dysmorphic disorder, but also other mental health concerns, right?
Absolutely. I think we spoke about that in a previous session, but the CANSAT tool is a tool that we've developed with Swinburne University. So that was back in 2017 with my mental health cap on, thinking how can we better pre-screen patients and support them should they have mental health concerns or problems. So the beautiful thing about this tool is that we continue to be in collaboration with Swinburne University, and we're doing studies as we speak. So you use it, and use it on yourself first. It's really, you use it on yourself. It's really, it's great. It's a nice baseline tool. So we tend to use it more for patients when they come in, or clients for the first time. And it also helps us and Swinburne University to have data and information so that we can continue to do more research around this space, which is what one of our passions is.
Brilliant. And if you're wanting to inquire about it, just head to our website. You'll be able to get a link there, or CPD Institute, and find out more about that there. Nicky, I just want to say thank you so much for the podcast today. It's always a delight talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening, everyone.
You've reached the end of another episode of the ABIC podcast, your online support community for the aesthetic and beauty industry. Thank you for listening, and until next time, stay connected.